Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider, presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pal Evan Grant. Evan, how are things?
Great.
Evan,
Great.
Have you got your golf clubs out?
I do. I'm getting ready for a big golf date.
We're having a two-man tournament here.
Yeah.
A one-day two-man tournament. We're going to see how
Winner is
bad.
whoever loses the fewest balls.
Yes, sir. That's it. That's how I measure my golf game. You know, I don't. No one asks me my score. They say how many balls did you lose, and that's how I measure it. So
I'm just happy to find somebody patient enough to go on the course with me.
it'll be really good. I think we should probably get a film crew out there for that. Don't you?
Oh yeah, people will want to see that. I'm sure
It'll be highly entertaining.
highly entertaining.
Highly entertaining.
But in the meantime, I'm going to go get some rest this weekend. I need some rest. I'm an old man.
Yeah, there was a lot of hacking going on there.
Hacking of a different kind, yeah. We're going to go to the beach for a couple of days and catch our breath.
Oh, nice. You going to Florida?
No, we're going to Hilton Head Island.
Wow, that's fancy.
I heard there was a Hilton there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been to Hilton Head in almost 40 years, but just figured we'd go somewhere other than Florida for a change.
Well, there you go. Mix it up a little bit. That's good. I'm sure Gina appreciates that. It's nice. And so you left the Rangers to Sean McFarland. You were so disgusted with the Rangers in the homestand against the Astros that you left them in the hands of Sean McFarland, your trustee understudy.
Yeah, I figured somebody else could deal with that for a while and deal with.
Yeah, they didn't get a good start to the road trip either. Well, certainly not in Houston, and that's carried right on into Colorado, where they kind of screwed up some stuff. But before we get to that, I want to bring up something that I read this morning as we're taping this on Tuesday. But Mike Petrello for MLB.com wrote that Jacob Misiorowski of the Brewers is the hardest thrower in the history of baseball. And he based that on the fact of their tracking module for that kind of number, which has been available to them since 2008. So, boy, you talk about presumptuous. We're just going to say, since we couldn't use these tracking modules before 2008, we're just going to say that none of that stuff happened. We're going to say that Sam McDowell and Nolan Ryan and Bob Feller and Steve Dalkowski, a legend that I once wrote about, they never threw 102 miles an hour.
Yeah, I listen, MLB StatCast system is a tool that we all use. It's a great tool. But I don't know that it is the be-all, end-all for all of baseball history. There's a lot of great information on there. And I don't know, because I thought Ben Joyce threw 105 miles an hour like 2 years ago. So I guess Jacob Misiorowski is the hardest throwing starter.
That's what they're saying, the hardest throwing starter. Yes.
That's all great. I do have to tell you, Kevin, that at the moment, every year I go through periods. Look, I cite a number of stats in my columns. I think it's important for context, and I try and bring that to the coverage. But there's a point in every season where I kind of go through this period of like just analytics overload. And I'm at that right now because I think here's what I know. We have more information and more predictability, more knowledge, and the game on the field sucks. I mean, the offense, it is... Nobody knows how to hit. You know, Skip Schumacher said the quiet part out loud the other day in Houston. And, of course, because I'm so stupid, it didn't dawn on me until after the game. He had said this in a pregame thing. You know, we talked about the game. He said, the game now is on base and slugging. And if you're not slugging, you have to get on base and figure out a way to score runs. And I thought about that, and it all made sense. And I said, there's one element missing here. It's all on base and all slugging because nobody knows how to hit. Nobody knows how to handle a bat and do what is necessary put the ball in play, get a hit, and extend innings. And that's where we're at. It was, watching the Rangers for the last 2.5 years, and this offense has been exceptionally frustrating for fans. I get it. I get any number of tweets every day saying blow it up, blow it up. I think it's a little bit early to blow it up in this season, but I get the sentiments. But I do think that they're onto something in that it's hard to watch the game and expect to see exciting offensive achievements.
Well, I think a couple things here. One, what we were just talking about, even though there have been lots of pitchers, not maybe lots of pitchers, but there's certainly been a half dozen to a dozen pitchers in the history of baseball who probably throw as hard as anybody throws today. That even if the tracking modules weren't very reliable back then, I don't doubt that was certainly possible. But there are certainly a lot more people throwing hard now than there has ever been in baseball. That is undoubtable. That's proven. You got lots of guys who are throwing in the high 90s and even breaking three figures. So that is certainly a problem for hitters today, simply because the mound is still just 60 feet 6 inches, or the rubber is from the plate. And so that makes it very difficult when a guy might be throwing a pitch 102 miles an hour, or he might be throwing one at 82. And so it is more difficult than ever for hitters. But this is something that I just mentioned in my newsletter Monday, Evan, and it's that, of course, we all remember, or at least I do, the 60s and certainly the late 60s when pitching dominated. And
Yeah, I don't remember that time.
the 1968
Did that
season.
happen before 2008?
Yeah, I did, before tracking modules. They're not really counting that. But that was the year of the pitcher, right? 1968, Bob Gibson, people like that were just unhittable, just unhittable. And you had lots of pitchers with ERAs in the ones, and so baseball reacted, and they dropped the mound, a few inches, and that had an effect, and the pitchers weren't as dominant in the '69 season. Uh, and I'm just wondering, Evan, for everything that baseball did, because this is not, because as you just said, it's not just the Rangers who aren't hitting well. I mean, if they were just league average, that's all I wanted the Rangers to be this year, was league average. Get the league average. I thought they had enough pitching to do it. Well, they're not even league average, but it does have a lot to do with Corey Seager's been terrible this year. Wyatt Langford's not even playing. You have gotten bounce back years from Jake Berger, from Josh Young, and Zeke Duran. And to me, if you had told me going in that those three guys would be performing like they are right now, I'd have said, well, then all's good. All you need to do is because you would have expected, Seager and Langford to be doing well at this point, and that's more than half of your lineup performing well. So that's probably good enough with this pitching staff. But anyway,
Yeah,
my point is the point I want to make is
yeah.
that baseball really helped itself with the pitch clock. I mean, immensely helped itself with the pitch clock, and it was part of the reason for the rebound in popularity of baseball, because games are just shorter now; they're under 3 hours, and that's what people want. Um, and this is a bigger issue than the length of the games, in my mind. Baseball has to figure out a way to help its hitters. In the NFL, every year they come up with ideas about how can we help offenses here, because
Yep.
that's what people want to see. And they change the rules on defense all the time. And of course, they did change. You can't line up on because of the shifts, and we got rid of those shifts, and that was good. That was a good thing. But they're going to have to do something, Evan, and I'm not sure what it is outside of backing the mound up, a foot.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the physics elements are that they could adjust to improve hitting. But Kevin, I do also feel that some of this is on the way we teach hitting now. We teach hitting, and it is all about mechanics. Right now I'm very impressed with watching Alejandro Osuna. And I think I said Sunday in my column that he feels like a player who understands his mission more than he does his mechanics. He understands what he needs to do up there. And that's put the ball in play, move it forward, hustle. He's had productive outs even when he hasn't reached base. No, he's not hitting the ball for extra bases. And I know for some reason you are highly, highly critical of Alejandro Osuna. I think he's taking as good at bats as anybody on the club right now. And I just think it comes down to this. Most hitters are all about getting their best swing off, which is great if we're there to watch swings, but we're there to watch the ball in play. And it's hard for me right now to watch Jake Berger. It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch Evan Carter, who should be a contact guy, and he's not making contact. He's not doing the things he can do to keep himself afloat. It was hard to watch Corey Seager and before he went out. It's just baffling to me that these guys and offenses aren't saying, okay, what can we do to get more balls in play and make opponents make plays?
I think a couple of things here. First of all right. So remember when I was making the big pitch for Luis Arias to the Rangers to sign him, and bring him in because he had played for Skip Schumacher in Miami, and here's a guy who had won a couple of batting titles, and what was the market for him?
It was not, but this is also, Kevin, you're right. The market for him was not great. This is also, I think, a part of the issue with the people running the game. They don't value hitting.
Well, that's my point was going to be that he doesn't have any power. He's just a singles hitter, and it's same thing with now Alejandro Osuna, a singles hitter. He's got that Ole swing, right? He got a little loop in the top of his swing after he hits. It's like that. I'm not driving the ball. I'm just getting it in play. I'm just flipping the ball out into the outfield. That same thing with his bat, and that's what he is. And baseball doesn't value that anymore. Baseball values it's just what you said. We want guys who are getting major production here, and so baseball has dived into these numbers so deep that they kind of maybe got themselves in a place they don't need to be. I'm not saying that I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that yes, obviously you do want to get guys who are going to hit for extra bases, but if they're not going to hit at all, that's not a good option. The trade off probably isn't worth it at this point.
No, it's not to me. And Luis Arias, we go back and look at Luis Arias's numbers, right? This year, right now, he's a 796 OPS. Last year, 719, which was league average. The year before, 744, 719, 739, 861. No, he's not a guy who's going to post an 800 OPS, but the league average OPS this year is 708. It is a bad hitting league, and he is giving you something that the great majority of players now don't. It may not be the production you desire, but it's production.
Well, this guy's getting on base. I don't. You just finished his OPS. I don't know what his OBP is every year, but I know he's a 300 hitter. And whatever happened to that in baseball? No, we don't even care about that anymore. We don't care what a guy's average is, and I get that. I understand that there are numbers that tell you more about stuff, but I still think that a guy's average it means something to me. If someone's hitting like that's pretty good. So
Look,
yeah,
he's hitting 324 this year. Okay, Jake Berger's on base percentage is 273 this year. He is reaching base at basically 25% higher rate than Jake is.
But Jake is Jake. I mean, I don't have a problem with Jake because he's hitting now like he did when he was in Miami, and that's all they wanted him to be, and that's fine. I'm okay with him. It's the other guys who can't do that. I mean, Evan Carter is the prime example. I mean, before spring training was over, I wrote a nice column about him saying how important it was for him to be good. I thought he could be good if he was healthy, and because he's a guy, because of his speed, because of his defensive ability, that if he hit a little bit, he was going to be more valuable than probably any of those other people because of the all-around package that he is. I mean, as we talked about last week, his WAR numbers are still good just because of his defense. But it's pitiful what he's doing now. I don't know why he's not bunting more. I mean, because he's not a bad bunter. He's pretty good. I mean, if I'm him, I'm bunting once a game
Yeah,
at this point until he gets
and that was,
something going.
that was the whole focus of my column on Sunday when the Rangers did score 8 runs against Houston. I think right now the approach that I would almost take if I was Skip Schumacher is forget about the old Ron Washington adage of do what the game asks you to do. I think Skip Schumacher ought to put in place do what I tell you to do, and that is we're going to bunt, we're going to hit and run, we're going to steal bases, we're going to put the ball in play, because the other thing is just not working and has not worked for the Rangers for more than a year now.
Yeah, well, 2 years down, almost three. Yeah, it's not good, and it's not, as we said, it's not good in baseball as a whole either. So this is it's something that baseball. I'm sure they're studying this now. I'm sure they're looking into it. We should probably ask Chris Young this because he was kind of in charge the last time they were when he worked in the commissioner's office. He was in charge of that kind of thing, and it just has to happen because it's going to drain all the enthusiasm out of the game again to see pitchers throwing. I mean, we can say all we want to. Well, they can throw 102 miles an hour. They won't last very long, and that's true. They won't. Nobody holds up under that kind of strain anymore for those kind of numbers. But they'll just find somebody else who can throw 100 miles an hour, and that'll be the case. So
Until he does, yeah. Until he doesn't, yeah, exactly.
so at this point, Evan, of course, as you wrote the other day, all of these things are true, and yet the Rangers were the third wild card if the playoffs were, today.
Yes.
So that shows you about what the situation is in baseball. I will say this: I do think there is a lot of demarcation. Boy, Tampa Bay sure plays well, and they sure seem to have figured it out. And we can complain about the numbers, the computers and all that, and the Rays are probably the smartest team in baseball. And look what they do every year in and year out. You need to talk to your good pal John Daniels, and I thought about this, and just I wanted to see if he would just sit down and say, you don't have to tell us their trade secrets, but what is it about the Rays that makes them so much better than everybody else?
Well, I mean, they have. I will say this: they have figured this part out, that they don't have the money to spend on players, but the investment into the analytics and the things that they kind of get their analysis to bear out are all about, I think, team philosophy and the team game and not individual players. And it's pennies on the dollar to invest in an analyst or a minor league instructor versus going and spending on your big league team. And so they can get more on the edges with player development, with scouting, with analysis than they can by going out and spending money on a middle reliever. So they put money into the places on the edges where they can create an advantage. And I think that they've got a team first approach on that in terms of building a philosophy. They're among the teams that have been the most aggressive in terms of base running and bunting and doing and playing some small ball.
Well, that's the thing for me because I mean, all teams now have analysts and they numbers and they've got geeks all over the place. I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody's doing it the right way, and maybe they're just better at it than everybody else. But certainly, playing small ball to me is what you have to do in today's game. I don't know how you expect people to come up with big innings. The complaint the other day, or the Rangers, they got 3 extra base hits in one inning. It was the first time in over a year when that's happened. And it's like I don't I couldn't care less about how many times they get a one inning with 2 doubles and a home run. That just doesn't matter. It should be, as we were just talking about, just getting guys on base, making things happen on the bases. Just the way the Rangers lost the game Monday night, right? There's runners at I guess first and second. Josh Young makes an error at third. Both runs score, and that's how you win a game. And that's how Colorado won that game, by putting the ball in play and making something happen. If you've already got runners on base, you're making the other team make plays, and that's something that the Rangers aren't doing as well as they did last year either.
Look,
They're not playing good defense.
let me just point with this out, okay, Kevin. The Rays at this point in time, this is just this year, they have the best record in the American League. They are second in baseball in stolen bases. They are tops in baseball in sacrifice bunts. They are tied for the lead in Major League Baseball in just what I would call productive outs, sacrifice bunts, sacrifice flies, with 30. They are doing the little things. Again, what they're doing is all their analytics have said is, hey, play baseball. Do the things to play baseball. Don't worry about hitting home runs. I think they've hit 39 home runs this year. They're not crushing baseballs. They are doing things that they need to do to advance runners and optimize runners. Because the bottom line in baseball now is if you can get to 4 runs a game, your chances of winning are much greater than 50%.
Well, absolutely, and of course, we see this even though they can't have shifts the way they were for a few years there when it was just awful and everybody was playing on one side of the field. You still get back to the point where a left-handed hitter will be up, and the third baseman will be playing in the shortstop hole, and doesn't that just say just if you pushed a hard bunt up here, to the left side, you might get a double. It's
there
ridiculous.
Was a run scoring situation in Houston this weekend. And again, look, Justin Foscue had a nice game on Monday, a very nice game on Monday in Colorado. But there was a situation where the Astros were playing Christian Walker again, way off the line, almost to where second base usually pays. The Rangers were in a run scoring opportunity there. The hole on the right side, to just squib a ball past first base was enormous. But they're not in position to take advantage of that.
That's what I don't understand, Evan, is that with all the hacks that guys take, not only during spring training and during the season and in batting practice, but in the off season, these guys are going to the cages and hitting, and nobody tries to bunt anymore. Nobody practices their bunting anymore. That's the embarrassing thing to me, is that when they'll say, well, they just don't know how to bunt. It's like, how could you not know how to bunt?
And Kevin, I'm not talking about just bunting, right? Because even with bunting, if you're even with bunting, it's not a terribly high percentage play all the time. But my point is handling the bat and knowing that different situations take different swings. And we don't see guys doing that anymore. You want to defeat the mock shift, okay, make players have to play where they need to play, right?
Right.
And teams just don't have the ability to do that. I realize I sound like old man yelling at clouds here, but we're not seeing home runs and we're not seeing doubles. And I'm telling you, if you had a guy who could basically say, all right, I'm just going to change my stance here a little bit, take a nice easy swing and just direct the ball to the first base line, that's a double, and that's slug. It may not look like a ball that ricocheted off the wall at, as Major League Baseball likes to point out, 107 miles an hour, but that's a double. It's slug and it produces runs.
Yeah, I don't, it is, when you're just talking about taking a nice easy swing, that's hard to do. I will say this, certainly you don't need to be yanking everything, right? And that was one of the things that, in baseball, listen, what did the Rangers do to Josh Young? When Josh Young came out of Texas Tech, he was basically kind of a spray hitter. He had some pop, but he hit the ball to all fields. The first thing they said was, "Oh no, we got to get you to pull the ball. We got to get you to hit home runs, get some lift on the ball, pull the ball." And then, of course, he did that for a little while, but then, of course, for 2 years he was awful. And now this year he's been much better. He is hitting the ball to right field. I know that you don't like Jake Berger. I don't like Osuna. You don't like Jake Berger, but Jake Berger has power to right field, and so that to me is at least an adjustment there to showing that a guy is waiting on the ball. He's letting the ball travel here. He's seeing the ball, and now this is the swing I put on it. So I give him credit for that. It's the idea, which I think that Wyatt Langford sometimes gets into slumps about, is that he's trying to pull everything when he's at the plate. And of course,
Yes.
so and Corey Seager will he will go to left field occasionally. You do see that with him, but he's also puts a pretty massive swing on the ball
Yes.
when he's hitting. And so, and right now, that's a real problem for him. Now, I do feel like at some point Seager's going to figure this out. He always does, and he's not an old guy. And I don't, as far as I know, he's not having any medical issues, physical issues that would keep him from correcting this slump. I think it is just a mental thing with him at the moment. Although, what's brutal to watch with him is to see him chase so many pitches.
Right.
It just seems it's one thing not to have your swing and sink, which sometimes that takes a little while for him. It's another thing just to say, well, why are you chasing these pitches? These are terrible pitches, and that has nothing to do with your swing. That's just all in your judgment.
Well,
So,
and again, last night I was watching the game, and it's just very clear to me if you throw Jake Berger a slider or a sweeper, anything that moves away from him,
mhm.
he's just got no chance. And I think that's what pitchers are going to continue to try and exploit there. And they've got to figure out a way to kind of combat that stuff. I think, we're just going through individual examples here. One of the things Alex Centrone, the assistant hitting coach, told me that he asked Ezekiel Duran to do was back off the plate about a step or so that he wasn't as tempted to try and hit the outside corner, that it didn't look as hittable to him. But what I think it's also allowed him to do is really turn much better on pitches on the inside half where he is good and get that much more out of him. And I think that's a big part of why he's off to such a good start. I do want to say this, Kevin, before we leave on the Rangers. This week in Houston, they didn't play well the first two games. They lost those. They nearly got no hit on Friday night, and the Twitter crowd started very much with the emotional blow it all up. We've seen this for 2.5 years. Get rid of it. Blow it up. And I just want to speak directly to them for a minute. I think they also lobby for the media to say blow it all up, and I think the Rangers may have to blow all of this up before the trade deadline arrives. But it's 47 games in. You're one good week away from the season looking a lot different. I think the only thing the Rangers really need to do, starting maybe when they get home, is sit down and put together a plan of, if we're going to rebuild, how are we going to attack this trade deadline? I think they need to have a targeted, very specific approach to what they want to do to maximize the value. I said the idea of bulk selling. And when I say bulk selling, that means exactly what it sounds like. Selling everything that you've got that has value, from Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, Corey Seager, all of those guys who would have significant value, down to, even guys like trading every piece that you could. I think the big question there would be, if Josh Young looks better than he has, would you consider trading Josh Young? And my answer at that point in time would probably be yes, because Josh would be going into the second year of arbitration. And he would, I don't know that I could see a rebuild taking just one off season. I don't think that's possible. So I'd have to consider that very, very seriously. And my message to folks is, I do understand where they're coming from, and I understand their frustration. I don't think it's time to sell now, first of all, because you wouldn't get anything on the market. Secondly, I think that what needs to happen is the Rangers need to plan for the contingency that this season doesn't turn around, and that they don't have a situation where they're kind of in the middle, and that they need to figure out what they want to do to make the most out of the rebuild opportunity they'll be presented with.
Well, I think that's all a possibility, and certainly Chris Young talked about that in spring training. That yeah, if they don't play, and he goes to the trade deadline, and they decided that yeah, we're not contending. Yes, everybody's gone. And the possibility of Seager too. There's no question about that. My problem with that argument is this: look, as poorly as they have hit so far overall, and I think mostly, as we talked about, that's usually mostly because of Wyatt Langford and Corey Seager. uh, as poorly as they've hit, they're still in the margins of the playoffs right now. And so if you blow this thing up, that's over. And that's over for next year, and that's over for the year after that, and that's over probably for the year after that. And that's what fans have to remember. I wrote a column in spring training after they won the World Series, and the column was about how long will the honeymoon last. I mean, how long will that World Series be good enough? Because we have to consider whether that was a little bit of a fluke, and can they do that again? And I got buried by people saying, "What a jerk! That this will last me forever." This team, going to the World Series, and that's good enough for me forever. They don't ever have to be good again. And it's like, okay, that lasted until like June. You know,
Forever is not as long as it used to be. I
no,
can
it's
tell you
not.
that.
I would feel like an old man, but that's right. Forever is not as long. So this is what it's like when they're not any good. I'm going to tell you right now, no, they're not doing very well right now, but they've got Corey Seager, the borderline Hall of Famer, playing shortstop for them. Wyatt Langford, a really promising player. Josh Young is starting to show a little bit of that potential now. There is no guarantee anybody you get back in any trades or anybody that you bring up in the minor leagues is going to be as good as any of those guys.
A
Uh,
100%.
they got Sebastian Walcott, and that is it. Uh, and so this is if you really think you want to do that, and everybody always says the same thing. I hate that when they say it to me. It'll be better than what they have now. It's like, no, it won't. I'm going to tell you right now, no, it won't be better. You only blow something up when you know you've got something coming. If you've got a plan, just as you said, if you've got a plan and it looks like you've got this thing happening, look, if blowing it up means trading Evaldi, DeGrom, and Seager, well, that's one thing. You know, those are three really good players, but those are expensive players that you can get rid of and maybe add some other parts, and to me that's something. I can't see myself unless you're, you know, just as you said, what are you going to get for Evan Carter at this point? No, nothing. He's worth a lot more to you than he is to anybody else. And I think people are going to want to see more of Josh Young than they've seen so far before you could get any kind of return on that. And because of
Correct.
his age, there was a time, in the last 2 years, I was ready to give up on Josh Young, but he's played better. Now his defense has regressed this year, and that's really problematic. He's got to be a two-way player. You can't have a guy over there playing defense the way he is right now. He's the second worst in the game in his position. That's not acceptable. So there's some things they got to do, and I'm willing to stick with them here for a little while, just because the rest of if you don't see enough other baseball and realize that, hey, look, nobody else is hitting either. There's only a handful of teams that are hitting well. If they can get this back together, if they can get Langford and Seager going, I think it's a different product, and so and that could really lift a
Look,
veil.
there's no choice but to hang with them right now. That's my point. You're not going to be
Yeah,
able to get anything of value, even if you decide to blow it up, until the week before the deadline at the earliest. I do
and that's
think
in
that,
August.
which is August 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah,
I do think that you can go through the exercise of, for lack of a better term, wargaming this. How do we want to approach it? And I think somebody should be dedicated to that project at the moment. Um, and listen, they're in a stretch right now that started with that series against the Astros, where they were playing 16 games against teams through the end of May that all have losing records, and three of them, the Astros, the Rockies, and the Angels, which comprise 13 of those 16 games, are the three worst records in baseball. So far, they are 1-3 against those teams. This is a big opportunity for them. They're shorthanded right now, and that's hurtful. But the Rangers need to make something out of this opportunity. I would tell you that for me, I think it's important. I'm never going to put a absolute on it, but I think it's important that this team come home from this road trip at 500, which means they can lose maybe one more game the rest of the way.
yeah, that's probably right. That's the hole you put yourself in when you started out 1-3. That means that you can still salvage this. That means you're going to have to win a lot of games. All right, that's going to do it for the Rangers. That was a little depressing, but that's okay. You know, we look at everything, warts and all. We're not just the team's not paying us anything. We want to tell you what's going on.
What are you
We've got,
mumbling about?
I don't know, something. I don't know.
You're just
Uh,
talking off into space.
well, maybe I was a little bit there. You know, our grandson, we keeping them. You know, we had our. I buried the lead. We had our third grandchild while we were gone, and
That's right.
yeah, and so he's great. He's going to get to come home from the hospital. We think either today or tomorrow. So we're excited about that. A grandson, and so we have three, and they live with 8 minutes from us. We timed it, and so we're keeping the older two, 5 and 2, and the 2-year-old is just hilarious. He'll just say anything, anytime, and he'll be talking along, and you can just understand everything he says, and then every once in a while he's just saying something I have no idea what he's saying, and I'm just nodding along with him.
Does he just yell "blew it up" when he's watching the Rangers?
He does. He likes watching baseball. He doesn't like watching the Rangers. If he sees the Rangers, he starts crying.
Do we have a name for the third grandson?
We do. Hayes Richard. The Richard Hayes was a name that my son and daughter-in-law just picked out. They liked it, which is fine. We like it too. Richard is a family name. My father's middle name was Richard. My brother's first name was Richard, and Jake, our oldest son, his middle name is Richard. But it goes back farther than that. I went back and I looked, and going back at least 300 years, Evan, there has been a Richard Sherrington in every generation. 300 years.
I wish I could look back 300 years.
How about that?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So I told her there was no pressure. You don't have to do this. You don't have to, we got another son. And
so you were able to go as far back as 1720.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where were the Sherringtons in 1720?
Well, they were all in England. But, my dad's family was from England, but he wasn't, and his father wasn't. But his my dad's grandmother was pregnant with his father when they came to America. And anyway, the best part about this story is that so there's a Fanny Sherrington. She had a son named him Richard. She had that child out of wedlock, and so she eventually married a guy named Ainscough, Ains Cough, Cough, Ainscough, and so I guess he did not adopt her child Richard, and he remained a Sherrington. I'm very glad that she had that child out of wedlock because I like Sherrington a lot better than Ainscough.
Ainscough.
Yeah, that's not. It's not.
Well,
good.
thank you for that episode of Where I Come From with Kevin Sherrington.
Yeah, that's
so.
it. That's the
and so, hey, so we're just gonna. The headline on this is that your grandson is named after Bob Hayes.
Bob Hayes, no, not named after Bob Hayes. No, they kind of do those things where my daughter-in-law, especially, she's the IT department of our family, and she researches everything, and she's an accountant, works for TI. She's really good at what she does, and anyway, I don't know. They looked at the metrics on Hayes, I think, and found out that this was the right name for him.
The metrics on Hayes?
The metrics on naming children.
Well, I'm just going to call Hayes Bullet. He's going to be Little Bullet Hayes to me.
Little Bullet, yeah. It could have been a lot of different Hayes too, but that's a good one.
Well, congratulations to you and Debbie, but even more so to Jake and Emily.
Yes, even more so to Jake and Emily. It's all been good. He's a cute little booger, I'll say that. Anyway, I was just going to mention also that we had this week, of course, we have the Nelson is at the TPC Craig Ranch this week. If it doesn't get rained out, which is, as someone once said, if you're trying to get rain in the area, schedule the Nelson. And so they put in $25 million of improvements under the guidance of Lanny Watkins, a local professional here, a longtime golfer, great guy. And I haven't been out there since they made all the changes. I was out there last year, and it was so funny. They were basically had these, huge tractors and whatever this heavy equipment's called out there on the course when the when the tournament was over. It's basically, all right, tournament's over. Now we're going to tear it all up, and that's basically what they did. They spent a lot of money and tried to give themselves some signature looks here. They're hoping that it'll be appealing to your average Joe Q professional golfer because frankly, the course or the tournament has fallen off, obviously, ever since Byron Nelson's passing. And some of that had to do with the schedule. Some of that had to do with the courses. The Four Seasons course was very difficult and not particularly pleasing. The players all loved the spa treatments they got there at the Four Seasons, and that was a big pull. Then they moved it down to Trinity Forest. That was a disaster for 2 years. And then they moved to Craig Ranch, which is better, but not a memorable course. That's a Tom Weiskopf course, as Brad Townsend wrote about the other day, talking about that and what they have done there, and what Lanny has tried to do was to give it some interest here. It's not one of the signature series tournaments, and that's what has to happen. The Nelson needs to get back to that level, and I guess
Yeah, I mean, I when I first came to Dallas, I kind of viewed the Nelson. This was '97 now. It sure felt like the Nelson was the fifth major, or the closest to the fifth major. I just feel like everything outside of the majors, leading up to the tour championships, everything else is just falling off. It's just another tournament.
Well, there's some, there are tournaments that people like, and listen, it's a lot of competition. I'm a lifelong Texan. I love Texas, but let's just face it, the weather here is not great. It's at least we're not freezing. But when you talk about all the other places that people can play golf at now and the other tournaments, they're in really nice places that are really lush, and it's not 100 degrees in the summer.
SportsDay Insider Kevin says Texas is miserable.
Texas is miserable. No, it's not miserable. It's just hard to play here. I always think of it. So they had the PGA Championship last weekend, right? And Aaron Rai won it from England, the first Englander to win it since 1919. That is phenomenal. I don't know how that's even possible, but anyway, that was the case. And of course, the Wanamaker Trophy is this great, big, huge jug, and it's silver jug, and it's great. It's a great look. Well, when they had the PGA Championship here, and I believe that was in '64, and Jack Nicklaus won it. It was out at the DAC. They left it out in the sun, and it was so hot they had to give Jack a towel to hold as like a pot holder, because the trophy had gotten so hot. It was like 102 degrees during the week, and that's when they decided it is too hot to play here. We're not playing any major. We're not playing any majors here in Texas ever again. And I don't.
Yeah, well, they're soft.
Yeah, they're soft. But it's the same thing with the Super Bowl and Jerry and the screw up of all that, right? We haven't seen a Super Bowl back at Jerry World since that one either. And of course they will say, oh, it's about scheduling, and you got to get out in front, and there's these new stadiums. They could put them in new stadiums. Like, yeah, you can say that all you want to, but there have been other stadiums that have had multiple Super Bowls since the Cowboys had theirs. So.
Look, Jerry, I will say this, that for an event, for a crown event, and look, it's certainly not too hot for the FIFA crowd, and it's not too, they're not worried about parking or anything for the FIFA crowd or public transport. But listen, going out to Arlington every day that I go out there, I get further and further reminded that, for that to host crown events, there's got to be public transport out there. And if there isn't, I just don't think that the Cowboys can pull it off, because it's a once every 2 week kind of odyssey for people. But the Rangers are never going to grow into a full bloom into the full breadth of what that franchise could be. It's going to always operate out in a place that's difficult to get to. And at least it's not hot out there right now because of the state of the route.
You got a route.
But I
Well,
go through
here's
periods
the
too,
issue.
Kevin, where I'm just astounded how this got built in Arlington yet again.
Well, here's the thing. Well, because they gave it to him for free, basically, and that's why. And Ray Davis, the price was right. Look, and as we talked about this before, Tom Hicks told me 1,000 years ago when he owned the team that everybody thinks that the team is in Arlington, and that's great because then that way you're servicing the Fort Worth fans and the Dallas fans, and then the people that live in the mid cities. Isn't that great? But that's not what the ticket base is. The season ticket base is mostly Dallas and Collin County, right? And so it's not in Fort Worth. So you are actually doing a disservice to most of your ticket base. That's why Tom brought the double A team from Tulsa and put it in Frisco, which was to me the smartest thing he ever did. Was
And
trying
if you want to sell
baseball.
suites at a high price, if you want to sell suites at a high price to corporate partners, where do you think that needs to be? It needs to be closer to where the corporate partners' offices are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you think about that. If they had built that team, and I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, if they had built the stadium over there in Farmers Market, which there was a plan for that, right? Before that was all developed, those Camden Yard apartments or whatever they're called, that was all just a bunch of old warehouses. If you'd have put that there, you think about the walk-up potential to that. When people, because they complain about parking and they say all that kind of stuff, if you're already parked down there and you're working downtown, and then you say to one of your friends, "Hey, why don't we go over to the game tonight?" How often do you think that would probably happen? You'd have a lot of that. You don't have how much do you think the Rangers have in walk up now? Not much. Nobody's going to decide. Let's drive all the way out to Arlington on the spur of the moment.
But Kevin, I think walk up is a small price to pay. I mean, I think the value of walk up is demand, right? It creates more demand. Hey, we
Sure.
want to go to the game, and that creates more energy and excitement. Dollar wise, I don't think it creates a huge windfall for a club.
It creates a reason for people to go.
Correct.
That's the thing. If you have a stadium down there, how many people do you think might want to live downtown? Think how that would have changed the metrics downtown. People who are making it livable now, because I can go to a game. That's a plus you got the Mavericks and the Stars over there. That's just north of downtown. If I got the baseball games here 80 nights a year, I could be going to a sporting event, year round if I live down here.
Completely agree. So, I mean, you don't have to go create destinations like you're trying to do in Arlington, because you've already got a destination. You've got downtown Dallas and you've got the infrastructure and all of that, and it just didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen. It's all sad. But anyway, that's just where we are. At least we got air conditioning now. So
that's true.
That's something. All right. That's going to do it for our podcast this week. We hope you'll come back next week after this one. I don't know. You may not come back after this. This may be as good as it's ever going to be again, and it wasn't very good today. I don't know. It was just okay. The best part was about my grandson, my new grandson. But anyway,
definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.